Hi, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am delighted to be joined on this episode by comics creator Joe Eisma. Joe, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I didn't think to ask before I hit that little record button.
Thank you. Yes, you did. That was great. It's
Fantastic.
funny. I know it can be kind of nerve-wracking for people sometimes, but yeah, good job.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I try, and
Yeah,
sometimes there's a name, and I'm like, I know how to pronounce that,
sure.
and someone will say, "Well, actually, it's this." So I just wanted to make
It's
sure. I always want to
yeah,
get that right.
yeah.
So the book that I know you for primarily, and I know you've done a variety of
Hmm.
different works across the years, as well as teaching.
Hmm.
Do some of that as well. Would be Morning Glories,
Yeah,
published by Image. And so definitely want to talk about that. But before
sure.
we make our way around to that, what drew you to comics, visual arts, visual storytelling?
Well, I just always loved comics. From an early age. I remember I had a pretty big family, like family of six siblings total. And My mom would take us all to the grocery store, and we'd all, this is the 80s, so we could just kind of wander around, But I would always wander over to the magazine rack and see the comics, and just the colors and all the pictures and everything. So I immediately gravitated right to that. And I still remember, I don't even, for some reason, I can't remember the issue number off the top of my head, but the first one my mom bought me was a Star Wars comic from Marvel's 80s or 70s and 80s Marvel
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars, and I just had Boba Fett on the cover. Anyway, I was like 3 years old, and took it home, showed my sister, and she's like reading it. I'm like, "What are you doing? Like, just look at the pictures." I was like, "Why are you wasting it?" Because I couldn't read yet. I was like, "Why are you wasting your time doing this reading? You just gotta look at the art." So
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, eventually obviously I was like, oh yeah, you can read these too. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, I just always liked it. And my parents were really encouraging about it. My dad was a big reader, and he'd always go to this I grew up in a town called West, which is in Texas and near Waco, and we would go into Waco quite a bit because it was like 15 minutes down the road from where we live. And he had this little used bookstore that he liked to go to, and they had comics, and he would take me with them, and he'd go look at the books, and I'd go get comics, go to the back issue bins. It was just a really, it's a special memory, and just always loved reading, and was always encouraged to kind of pursue that. And from that, I just loved to draw. I never like traced the comics that I got, but I definitely liked kind of drawing my interpretations of the characters and stuff. And at school, finishing my worksheets and flipping it over and drawing on the back of them, and
Mm-hmm.
just always doodling. Even as I got older, like when we used to have to take notes in notebooks and stuff, I'd be doodling in the margins and stuff. So yeah, just I was always just kind of I mean, to be fair, I guess I was a big Star Wars fan when those came out. So like it was through my fandom of Star Wars that I was like, oh, I recognize that logo,
Mm-hmm.
and then subsequently just kind of fed into reading other comics. I remember like my other favorite as a kid was the Fantastic Four, because I really liked the Thing, Ben Grimm. I liked that
Oh yeah.
design, all the rocks and everything. It was really striking, and so I always drew him. Um, but yeah, it was just it was a just a really engaging pursuit that my family just encouraged. And it's kind of, I've had like times in my life where like I wasn't as into comics, and then and then I get back into it. But like, I wasn't in comics. Like, I remember this is kind of a really weird story. I remember like, whenever I was a kid, and like I think might have been second or first grade, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I
Mm-hmm.
really wrote like comic book artist. And I mean, it took me like a really wayward path, but I ended up, finally achieving it like when I was in my 30s. So
That's cool. That's cool. And
yeah.
I'm getting the sense, talking Star Wars, I'm noticing
Mhm.
a couple of uh, pop culture things around you. I'm
Yeah.
getting a sense you like sci-fi. Getting a sense.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Yeah,
I'm a big
same.
sci-fi nerd. My dad is, it comes from my
Same.
dad.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There's
yeah.
just something about a story that's kind of like the world, but isn't.
Hmm. Yeah.
I just love that too.
Yeah. I love
I
that
don't
kind
know
of
how to explain it.
escapist. Yeah. It's kind of like escapism, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
But at the same time, you're kind of tethered. You're like,
Right.
it's like this, and so I could think about that. Yeah, yeah, I
Hmm.
love that.
Yeah.
Love it. And you mentioned doodling in your notes. So as an
Yeah.
educator, I'm
Yeah.
always like I'm a big fan of sketchnoting, actually.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So yeah, yeah. So there's power in that visual. There really
Right.
is.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, and now too, I also teach as well. So I've kind of like over the course of the past like 5 years, I've kind of shifted the stuff that I teach. Like I was teaching a lot of art classes, and now I'm teaching a lot of like just sort of traditional like photo editing and graphic design stuff with the Adobe Creative Suite. But I also, I encourage my students to like, sketch things out, even though like a lot of them like, I can't draw. I'm like, it doesn't matter, just sketch it out and you just rough it out. It's like it's the same thing. It's just kind of like doing a rough draft. You're just kind of just spitballing basically.
Uh, Um, so that kind of leads into the next question,
Mhm.
which is what comics and visuals allow you to do as a storyteller, and what you can kind of get across in that medium versus maybe others.
Yeah, that's a great question. I went to college, after like a couple of semesters, like trying to figure out what my major was going to be, and I ended up graduating with a degree in film because I really liked that medium, and I'm still kind of nerd out about certain directors. I mean, I got Ridley Scott posters in my office here, but comics, like what I love about comics is you basically like visually, like you are the director, cinematographer, casting director. You
Mhm.
have VFX, like you're the budget is as much as you want to put into each page,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
and I love the storytelling in comics because like, for one, like my experience, dealing with film school, like setup is kind of time consuming, and then like, sometimes dealing with actors can be kind of traumatic, no pun intended, but like you're in complete control. Well, not in complete control, like if it's a collaboration, but like, in terms of like the page, I'm in control of like how that page is going to be portrayed. And I can, I love like directing my characters and making them act on the page. You can do, I mean, what you are limited by is the fact that it is a static medium and it's a two-dimensional medium, and you're trying to represent a three-dimensional world. But I love that challenge, and I love, and that's one thing that I think comics, comics has its like ebbs and flows in terms of lucrativeness and sales and popularity, but like it just doesn't die. Comics just doesn't die because like some of these like quirks, like the storytelling capabilities, like you can't really do that anywhere else. Like I mean, with prose is great because like it leaves it up to the reader to visualize it, and comics does take away that agency from the reader, but like it's it to me, and I know like there's this kind of there is a stigma about like comics being like test pilots for like film or whatever, like Hollywood people come in and they'll like, oh, we'll do the comic first and then we can do the adaptation. But like you can tell like really great stories, and like the history is there to show you like it doesn't have to be a movie, it doesn't have to be a TV show. Comics, like the storytelling you can do, it can have such a huge impact. And it can be a complex story. It can be a major epic, like an Avengers story, or it could be something really simple, like I'm trying to think of someone's like some creators that I like Day Tripper, I think is the one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, what like just. I mean that story, like I remember just being so emotional after reading it, and like the fact that this comic, which kind of comics does get stigmatized as like kiddie material and stuff, like, but I mean like the Luna Brothers, like they were able to like tell such a powerful story, and art resonates with you, and
Oh,
that's what I love
definitely.
about it. I mean, it's a perfect joining of narrative and art, in my opinion. And you can read a book and you can have an emotional reaction to it. You can go to a art museum and have an emotional reaction to a painting. And I think like when it works, like you can combine both of those experiences. So
Cool. Very well said. Yeah. Yeah.
thank you. Mhm.
Um, Kind of captures a lot of the things that I think about the medium, and probably I was a film kid too, and continue to
Mhm.
love film.
Mhm.
But there are times that I kind of fall out of love with film for a
Sure.
little while, and I've
Sure.
not had that with comics. Comics, I
Oh,
just
nice.
continue to enjoy.
Good.
Yeah, yeah, and so you captured a lot there as far as just what works so well
Yeah.
with
Awesome.
comics. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So you've worked for DC,
Mhm.
Boom, multiple publishers, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
but again, the thing that has kind of been the mainstay is Morning Glories, which is
Yeah.
a really interesting layered book.
Mhm. Yeah.
Before I dive into to talk about some things that I enjoy about
Sure.
it, anything that if folks out there are not familiar with it, that you would say about Morning Glories is kind of the tagline.
Sure, sure. So, I mean, it's a mystery sci-fi story about a mysterious boarding school and these six gifted but troubled teens. It focuses on them and their first like day at the school, like they're the new students. And I mean, that's just kind of the basic premise. And from there, I mean, it goes in all sorts of, manner of directions. I mean, we have like I don't want to spoil anything, but I mean, like,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
really dense mystery, some horror elements, teen drama, a little bit of
Mhm,
comedy. It's a kind of multi-genre kind of thing, heavily influenced by stuff like The Invisibles,
mhm,
by Grant Morrison, and also like Lost, the TV show. That's
mhm.
one we always got compared to.
Yeah.
And Runaways by Marvel. That was our big thing. That's kind of how we used to always, when we were first starting out, we would be at conventions, kind of, we'd meet people and it was like, it's Runaways meets Lost. So
Mhm,
in terms of
mhm.
that, like you have these kids who are kind of, you don't know, maybe they have powers, maybe they, who knows what's going on there. And then there's these really crazy mysteries and strange things happening at this school. And so we kind of put both of those together and came up with this story.
And it is a multiple volume arc
Hmm.
at this point. I mean, you've
Yeah.
crafted an entire world there. And one of
Hmm.
the things that stands out to me about it, when I think about encountering the book the first time,
Hmm.
there's sinister elements, there are these dark elements, and as you mentioned, there's horror, but the whole look and feel of the book is this very like pristine universe kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
almost like I don't want to say bait and switch, but the color scheme and
Yeah.
some of that kind of plays against expectation
Really?
in a
Yeah.
way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We
Which
like
is
that.
something I appreciate. I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, another, somewhere down a few years down the line after starting Morning Glory, sorry, I'm getting tongue tied. I started doing some work with Archie on a lot of their products, and so it's funny because like my approach to Archie is not the approach I have to Morning Glory. It's like, I mean, there are different Archie franchises that I've worked on, but none of them are like any remotely close to Morning Glories, and yeah, we definitely color was actually a pretty major element of our story. The initial colorist, Alex Salazzo, and then our later colorist, Paul Little, they are essential to the look of that book because the way I like to draw, what was so special about Morning Glories to me was it was really like, it was pretty early in my career, but it was also a chance for me to really put forth my voice and really kind of do art the way I wanted to do it. And like the art that I like to draw is what they call like clean line, open line art. Like I typically, especially back then, I didn't do a lot of what they call spot blacks, which is, inking in shadows and all that stuff. I guess that kind of to bring it back to my college days, that kind of came from my film training, which is what I really love, film and like how film uses light to paint to light a scene, to literally light a scene, but to actually to set mood and emotion. And so what Alex and Paul were able to do with color in that book, I think went a long way to like selling the emotional narrative beats in that story. But yeah, we definitely kind of, especially early on, we kind of wanted to lull you into this false sense of security of what the book was in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah.
the color palette, but then just kind of pull the rug out from you.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And the I mentioned pristine, but the other word I was trying to think of was like the clean
Yeah.
aspect of it, which is the line work as
Hmm.
well. It
Yeah.
just everything's clear and
Hmm.
defined. And then I love that sort of literary way as the story goes,
Yeah.
the mystery unfolds a little bit
Yeah.
more as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully I've said enough to tantalize readers without giving
Hopefully.
anything away.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's another reason to I appreciate the work that Image does and allowing creators to, yeah, have that space and
Hmm.
share stories that aren't necessarily, the ones that you might expect or that
Right.
don't work in quite the ways that you might expect. You get to
Yeah.
really do some creative things.
Yeah, Image was always fantastic. They were always they just kind of let us do our own thing. They didn't tell there was maybe I think there was one particular instance where we had some pushback from editorial, but it was rightful pushback regarding a scene that could have been interpreted probably wrongly. And
Mm-hmm.
we were both young, me and Nick Spencer, and at that time, and just starting out, not really sure. Like, we wanted to push boundaries with this book, but we're like, oh yeah, maybe that's not one we should push.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so they rightfully kind of, helped us, come back from that a little bit. But otherwise, yeah, they were very great at just fostering our creativity, and it was so great for me too because, like, again, that was literally, I'm trying to think here, that was probably the third or fourth project I ever worked on in comics because I had been doing work in another industry and was really just kind of burned out on it. And I started drawing comics on the side. And so I did some books, or I did a series with a local publisher here in Dallas, where I live now, and then to another independent publisher, and then to another one. And then I met Nick Spencer on a message board, and he
mm-hmm.
pitched me Morning Glories. And so yeah, it was like the fourth project. It was like the fourth major project. I was really early in my career to be given something that was just so free reign, So it's
Yeah,
pretty shocking.
yeah, yeah. And shout out to message boards
Oh
back in
yeah, I
back in
missed
the
those places,
day.
man. Like the board we met on was Brian Michael Bendis. It was because I love Bendis's stuff. I was a huge fan of Ultimate Spider-Man and Powers, and
Mhm.
so it was towards the end of my college career. I started like, I was like, well, I mean, I was in Waco, and there's not really a big comics scene in Waco, so I didn't really have anybody to like banter about the books with. But I found Bendis's message board, and so I just joined it to just talk about comics, and eventually started posting my art, and that's how Nick saw my stuff because he liked the art that I was posting. But yeah, it was just fun. I missed that kind of interaction. I mean, it's not the same with social media now,
Yeah,
um, but in yeah, I kind of wish we could go back to that.
very true. Maybe somebody out there will listen and merge
Yeah,
those media or something like that.
right.
But yeah. So as far as your creative journey, anything that you would like to hat tip right now that readers can check out and upcoming events,
Yeah.
all of those sort of things.
Yeah, sure. Well, what I've been doing a lot lately, what I've kind of sort of moved my area into is I've been doing a lot of stuff with Star Trek over at IDW. So last year I drew a story in Star Trek 400 that was written by Will Wheaton, who plays Wesley
Mhm.
Crusher on Star Trek Next Generation. And it was set like during the Picard era, which is, there's so many eras of Star Trek now. And so that was great. I drew a fill-in issue of the ongoing Star Trek series. I've got a Star Trek series I'm working on now that they haven't announced yet, but it'll be for the fall.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
yeah, I've done that. Beyond that, I've done a lot of stuff with Archie. There's all kinds of stuff out there. The Riverdale comics, Jughead the Hunger, where Jughead is a werewolf. That's one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorites. I hope we can get back to that one day. I did one for Aftershock Comics last year called Tales of Mother F. Goose, which is like Quentin Tarantino versions of Mother Goose Tales.
Nice,
Uh,
nice.
that- yeah, that was pretty fun. But yeah, I've just been, like that's the thing. Like Morning Glories was like my thing for the longest time. I stayed super focused on that. But like a lot of my collaborators on that book went on to like do other franchises as well because it's easier for a writer or for a cover artist to take on other gigs. For an interior artist to take on other jobs is not really always doable because like it's a lot more labor intensive to do one book than to add
Yeah.
on other things. So that's what I've just been trying to do since in the years since is just to get my art out there into whatever else I can work on. And I've got a young adults graphic novel coming out in the fall called The
Oh,
Darkness We Brought Back, and I'm working on another one that we just signed the contract for with two of my collaborators here in Texas that I love, Lila Sturgis and Dave Justice. And this is a project that we've been working on, or not a project we've been working on, but it's a collaboration we've been working on for like 14 years because we've always
wow.
wanted to work together, just had never been able to make it happen. And so now we had a project that Maverick, a subsidiary of Mad Cave Studios, really liked. And
Hmm.
so we're excited to be working on that. And that should be out hopefully 2024. I'm hoping before 2025, but we'll see. But yeah, so I'm kind of staying with sci-fi now with the
Love it.
Star Trek
Yeah.
and trying to move into the young adult graphic novel realm as well. So.
Cool things. Cool things. I love what IDW has put out with the Star Trek books.
Mhm.
Because I just finished season 3 of Picard, which is
Oh, it's
top
phenomenal.
notch.
Oh
Yeah,
my
top
gosh.
notch
So
stuff.
great.
I,
Yeah.
I was loving every minute of it,
Yeah.
and love that era. So
Yeah.
excited to
Same.
see the project that you have coming
Yeah.
from them. And I also, my day job is teaching English to young adults, and so
Oh,
there's a
nice.
yeah, there's such a space out there for young adult graphic novels. So also
Yeah.
excited to see what you've got cooking in that avenue as well.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I will also mention there's a nice space below the podcast. If
Mhm.
you have a website, social
Okay.
media, things like that, I'll
Awesome.
make sure to post that there as well so that people can follow up on some of the things that you were just talking about.
Awesome.
Did I miss anything in the interview that you'd like to make sure to share out into the message board that is now YouTube and Anchor, Spotify, all of that kind of stuff?
I think you got it. I think we covered everything. I mean, Morning Glories, that's always going to be my baby. That's the one I'm always going to be the most known for. I'm hoping one day we'll get back to it. I speak with Nick Spencer occasionally. He's had some life stuff happen. That's not my place to talk about, but
Sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I always tell fans because that's the question I always get asked the most, and people, I always hate to say I don't have any news for you, but it's a project that's near and dear to our hearts, and so there's still hope, whether it's sooner or later. Hopefully it'll come back, and then yeah, just thank you all to everyone who's out there that has continued to support my art throughout the years and continues to do so, and hopefully you'll like the new stuff I'm doing with the Star Trek universe and with the young adult graphic novels.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as far as more morning glories, when it's right, it's right.
Right,
So looking
exactly.
forward to that time and place and all of those things.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking some time to talk with me, and glad to share about your work anytime.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.